everybody out there who knows my poetry and is very reluctant to buy my CDs when they see them sitting there next to the books. Let me tell you, you ask, what is this? Oh, are you reading poetry with music? And I've had people say, oh no, you're going to mess up the poetry with the music, and why are you doing, what in the world is a saxophone doing with poetry? You know, it comes from the same place. Most poetry in the world isn't on the page. Most poetry in the world is sung, or we dance to it. And what I'm doing is really goes back to the roots of all of our traditions. You know, all of our poetry traditions are indigenous in that way. And when poetry came into the world, it came in with music. And sometimes I think that everybody's been too indoctrinated in the university system. Okay, we put poetry over here, and it belongs in books and belongs in the universities, or it's slam poetry, which is another thing, but it's still poetry. Or we put music over here. But what this is, you know, you get the poetry in here. You get the poetry, but I'm singing the poetry. Some of it I speak, but I sing. The saxophone is part of it. The saxophone is another kind of voice. It's part of my poetic voice. Just as or if I play ukulele or singing, it's part of the same thing. It's more dynamic, I think, in a way. It's not like words on a page which are freeze-dried, and yes, when you read them, then it's like adding water, and they fill up, and you can carry it with you anywhere. Well, you can download this, or download it onto your iPod, or you can carry it anywhere. But for me, it's like taking it, putting it this way, putting the poetry in this kind of form, singing the poetry, which is what songs are anyway, is getting back to it's moving us back towards the place. The reason we go to poetry in the first place is to try to get to that place without words. And poems are probably the most distilled language. And it takes us, you know, we're always trying, at least for me as a poet, I'm always trying to get to the place without words. And when I first heard the saxophone, when it first really struck me that I could get to that I needed a saxophone to get to the place without words. It was hearing Gato Barbieri at Sandra Cisneros' house. Her brothers were, she seemed like she had 100 brothers all over. And I was listening, walking through, and I heard music. I said, who's that? It's Gato Barbieri. And I thought, oh my God, you know, he's poetry without the words. And so this is, here you get the poetry with the words and the music too. You get all of it, including a saxophone. So it's all here. It's all here. Not that the books aren't important too, but you're not losing one by accepting the other. I first came to poetry through singing anyway, through voice, when I was a child. My mother was a singer, and she wrote songs, and I loved, of course, radios, jukeboxes, any kind of music, and I loved the words with it too. Although I loved instrumentals, I loved Miles Davis's horn, and I could travel with saxophones, but with jazz music. Even as a child, I found myself very compelled, even though it wasn't what we listened to mostly at home. Mostly at home it was country western, it was pop, Nat King Cole, ballads. My mother loved those. My mother loved jazz, jazzy kinds of ballads. And so what I say here at the beginning of this, in the liner notes of Winding Through the Milky Way, is singing called me into this realm. I was intrigued, I followed. The heart was the drum. We're nothing without the bottom beat. Poetry was my response to the journey of the wandering soul. I found a way to travel and find meaning in the collective dream song, motivated by justice and an utter need for beauty in the post-colonial mess. And are we in a mess? I came of age in the midst of a shifting political, national, native consciousness. I carried into the resurgence my mother's love of singing and songwriting, and my father's family's oratorical and artistic accomplishments. Then one day, I couldn't do without a saxophone, which led me back to the stomp grounds of the heart. I began to sing. We're all here to help each other. Mado and thank you go to many. And then I just want to say thank you too in this album, making of this album, to Larry Mitchell, who, without whose help as my producer and guitar player, and he plays most everything else in here that I don't play, except we have Robert Mueller on piano on a few tunes, and Lurleen McGregor on singing and counting, at the end of This Is My Heart, and the end of Nohuli, and Julian B., a Creek rapper extraordinaire, hip-hop artist. He's also on here in a song called Going Home. So on this album there are many different kinds of songs. I've also introduced the native flute here. There's a little story, traditional Mvskoke story, with a song that includes a song that was sung on the Trail of Tears to give people strength to keep on going no matter the heartbreak, the terrible heartbreak. Nohuli, a little Hawaiian song. Winding Through the Milky Way, which is very jazzy and includes a healing song inside it. Some flute songs, Equinox, which won the New Mexico Music Award for Native Contemporary. Morning Song, Sunrise, Wichitaito, Jim Pepper, in honor of Jim Pepper. Without him, who gives me a context for my saxophone in Indian country and jazz. He made the road, and then Going Home. So I hope you enjoy it. And it's, as I said, Winding Through the Milky Way is a little road music to accompany us as we make the timeless journey between earth and sky. We're in a story that always includes the ancient while riding to the outer edge. We'll get there with music, poetry, lyrics, stories, sheer sorrow and joy. Start with a voice, let it fly free. Bring in a saxophone to touch those places the words can't reach. Add an insatiable guitar, some heavy philosophical bass, a little piano, and Mvskoke and other tribal rhythms to take us back to Congo Square and before, back up into the Milky Way. Add the good thoughts of those we've met along the way. We've got it, and we're traveling now. Harjo.